What's going on, everybody? This is Epic Fox. Today we're going to be taking a look at conflict series Rommel in Africa. We're going to roll across the northern deserts here all the way to Cairo. At least we're going to try. Here's the start screen and the welcome text. You can go ahead and take some time to read it, rewind it or pause it if you want to, whatever. We're going to go ahead and move forward with the game. I am expecting several dozen turns out of this one. Up top we got the Italian armor right there. We're going to go ahead and roll them out. We're going to hit some enemy defenses. We'll start pounding away. We got the only Germans on the field right now, the 5th Light Division. They're going to run into elements of the 2nd Armored Division. And the UK is going to start off with kind of a retreat right off the bat. The plan is to take the Italian infantry and move them east, sort of form up into a line formation across that southern desert and just sweep that whole desert area all the way across. We'll see how that ends up. We are going to be shuttling lots of fuel. That's the fuel depot, the can that just moved. We're going to be refilling that as well from Al and Tobruk. I'll explain that a little bit more here pretty soon. Let's concentrate on this enemy down here and kind of knock him out of the way. I am going to take some time to explain the details of this particular conflict game, and once that's out of the way we'll speed things up and kind of set it to a good pace. That way we're not taking all day with this video. The infantry, I'm moving right now across this northern road. They are going to hit the southern deserts, but the roads give them kind of a boost. I can really march them across there fast and then go down south. I'm going to send a couple infantry divisions immediately down to hit any enemy that's down there in the obscured areas. You do not want to leave any elements down there, not a single one. They will make you pay for leaving any scrounge forces down there. I'm going to leave the Stuka here at this first airfield because the fuel is just too precious at this point. We're going to see what happens. I have played this scenario a couple times all the way to Tobruk, but never further than, because I kind of wanted to save it for this video and just see what happens as we go through it. Obviously I did get a chance, and that's the main reason why, is to test out the fuel running and the supply and the resource management aspect of this game. It's quite a bit different from the others. If you've played the American Revolution or the Civil War, you may be sort of used to these aspects of these conflict series, but most of the other World War II games, they don't have this sort of supply system. And you know, historically this is the kind of things that the Germans and the Italians faced with their fuel, is these kind of issues. So I've hit these issues early on in my early games and made some huge adjustments and kind of learned how they really operate, and I've managed to get it under control to a point. But you just got to take your time with the tanks after you reach a certain point. That's the main thing. You got to be willing to relieve them, restore their fatigue, and just not roll it. You know, the desert's just so tempting because there's no terrain negatives on your guys, and you can just roll those tanks out like it's almost like it's open road, and you can burn up some fuel really quick. So my strategy of this game, like I said, is to keep the tanks out of the desert to where the supply trucks can get to them quickly and efficiently, and then get back to the depots. Now you can see the fuel trucks themselves have a capacity of 10 fuel. That's the number in the lower right of the truck that's moving right now. The depot right to the left has a capacity of 70. Now an empty tank will take up a full fuel truck, so it's 10 fuel. And so each time that fuel truck fills up a tank and returns to the depot is going to lose 10 fuel right off the bat, and that can go very, very quickly. It does not take long to go through 70 fuel on a depot. Now you do have to shuttle those depots back and forth to El Gili, where there is an unlimited refill supply. So that's the important key, and it's very important that you maintain that fuel supply in the beginning and keep that depot as full as you can, your tanks as full as you can, before you start marching that depot towards Tobruk after you've captured it, or as you're getting ready to capture it, if you'd like to time it like that. And so fuel, 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 fuel. Don't forget, never stop thinking about fuel, and you got to keep your tanks rolling. Your infantry, they seem to be very, very good in the early stages of this game as compared to the quality of the enemy you'll face, which brings me to my next point. This game does seem easier than the other conflict series games that I've played. Almost much easier, I would say. It's strange. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't played past Tobruk, so we'll see. Maybe there's some sort of Allied or British massive counterattack, which did happen in the real world, but I don't know. You can always expect that from JN, the creators of these games. He is a very good developer, an amazing developer. So we'll see how this game turns out after the first half, which I have played before. We are going to kick up the speed here pretty soon. We're moving on into turn 6, and I am digging the feel of this game so far. The airfields, as you're rolling around the road, the reason I move my tanks off the actual road is because to capture those airfields. And that allows me to move my Stuka forward. Also, you can see the red areas where I haven't captured yet, or I don't have any visuals on. Those areas are light red. They come in 3 different shades of red: a light red, a medium red, and a dark red. And the light red are areas where over the turns will eventually become your territory. The dark red, if you have units surrounded almost fully by dark red, that means within a turn or two they will be completely engulfed in enemy territory and their supply will be cut off. So you can see like that single red hex straight in the center that will eventually automatically become mine, even if I don't move a division or a unit into that hex. And the Stuka has 10 fuel also. We're going to jump it forward in the airbase. You can see that did diminish its fuel by 1. So you even have to refuel your Air Force. Thankfully, there's only one plane, and you can be tempted to use it. I'm pretty good at holding off. The armor and the infantry, like I said, the quality of our forces are just so much greater than enemies at this point in the game that the Stuka isn't really needed. You can see I did get another unit of German armor in there, so there's another fuel leader. And I think after this turn we'll go ahead and speed things up a bit. You can see I jumped that fuel truck out there in the middle. Now you can see, for those of you who haven't watched any of the conflict intros or anything that I may have up at this point, those green lines are tactical movement lines, and if you have tactical movement points, when you move a unit across one of those green lines, it does not take any movement points away from that unit, so it's basically a free move. However, like I said, it takes a TMP. You can see as I switch and jump around units, the TMP will come up and disappear, but whenever it's there, you can see how many TMP points I have. And each time you do that, you lose one. And you can still cross those lines without tactical move points. It just costs movement points to do so. The way you get more tactical move points varies from conflict series game to game, but in this particular campaign you can see certain hexes on the battlefield that have a faint diamond, green diamond that says TMP +1 in it, and you have to control that hex. If you do, at the end of every turn you gain 1 tactical move point. So after you gain a big portion of the desert, not only do you have lots of airfields scattered around, but you also have a tremendous supply of tactical move points, which is absolutely invaluable because that's how you're going to get your forces across the desert. All your reinforcements that are coming from the beaches at El Aghelia and Tobruk, when they come in, you got to move them across somehow. Otherwise, they'll take all day. And I think that's going to about wrap it up for the introduction here. And we'll go ahead and speed things up a bit. Alrighty, we got it moving now. So, I am going to leave this at this speed for quite a while until anything important pops up, and then I'll slow it back down. So, we got basically the plan in action right here. The recon element is kind of wrapping things up in the rear lines there, making sure there's no floaters back there, down there, ready to come up and jump over my fuel lines. So you do not want your fuel to get captured because it will get taken. Your trucks, if they get attacked, will retreat, but they will lose any fuel that they were carrying. Same thing with your depots. I believe with your depots. I've never had a depot get attacked yet, so let's hope we don't find out this game either, because I am really trying to have a successful game here. One of the things that impressed me about this game is the feeling that which it gives you, which is that you really are on a short string with your supplies. There is ways to minimize that, as I've said before, and if you pick up some tips from this game, that would be a good thing, because you wouldn't make some of the mistakes that I made. You can see I'm kind of getting that Italian armor down south there, a little fatigued, and they're also getting low on fuel, but that's alright because I got a truck hitting that, and the German armor right there, and it'll return with fuel for the Italians. I'm not too concerned about the Italian armor because, like I said, I don't know what's after Tobruk. So if we got some heavy British armor coming, whether they're cruiser tanks or Matilda 2s, or I have no clue what's coming after Tobruk. So I am trying to get the German armor a lot of experience and a lot of special abilities, and that way they're prepared to fend off whatever comes our way after that point. You can see it at some point a couple turns ago, I got some artillery and started moving them up the road there. Artillery can move pretty quick in this game, so I'm assuming they're limbered. However, they don't use any fuel to move, which is a blessing. So count your stars that you don't have to use fuel to move your artillery for the speed bonus that they get. You can kind of see I am splitting my armor up, which wasn't the original plan. You can see right there the Italian armor was engaged with some of that special infantry that I was talking about. Very fast moving, and they hit hard for their numbers. So you do want to be careful with those guys. There they are again. And make sure, see, there he goes, moving, trying to surround me already. And now we got some Indians getting involved, and the Indians are going to move in, and they can be a pain to deal with in mass. So you really got to watch your flanks with them, and that's about it. As long as you can do that, shouldn't be too difficult. You can see that fuel depot is completely empty now, moving back towards El Algilia, and they do have a big bonus to their speed when they're empty, so it is more beneficial to run them dry if you're further away, because then they can get back even faster than if you would have left if they still had some drops of fuel left to give in. So the smarter thing is to empty them out and then head back. If you can time it between your two depots to where they're kind of one's getting back just as the other one's refueling, I think we can have some success. Like I said, haven't been past Tobruk, so this is all in theory at this point. We're just going to keep on marching on east. You can see it looks like we're possibly 25 to 30% on down the road here. And that fuel depot, man, I got to get some fuel. Getting the truck back there. The trucks are shuttling back and forth. I hate where those Indians are at, where the Italian armor is pursuing them up into that middle desert. I've gotten caught up there a couple times, and you can see I already got my German armor right there. So the Italian armor is in more of a supporting role, making sure their supply lines don't get cut up up towards the coast there. And some more action going on down there in those southern deserts. There's another one of those elite infantry units, or maybe the same one that kind of kicked it on down south. Another annoying thing about those guys is they seem to be able to withdraw almost unlimited when you attack him. It's like you got to have 3 units surrounding him. Hit him with one, let him withdraw. Then you got to take the other one, hope you can find him with his move, and then hit him again. Then you got to have another one that hopefully that was just standing around where he withdraw the third time. So you just kind of got to keep. See right there. I don't even think he's dead yet. We'll see. He may be. We are in fast forward mode here, so you do got to keep in mind the scale of the speed here is running 400% faster than I actually played the game. So there's Tobruk right in our sights. We'll slow it down. We'll take a closer look at things as we head into the middle of the field here. You can see I got a second artillery unit down in El Aguila, so I'll start moving them eastward, just like everything else. I got some German infantry finally that I'm going to move that way too. I think I will send them up north to support the armor. The armor, I'm assuming, will eventually bottleneck. I've had that partial in other times I've ran this scenario, and it's half. So we'll try to avoid those bottlenecks as best we can with some infantry who don't need fuel and can easily run around the flanks to get the combat bonuses. This game is all about combat bonuses. Haven't seen that so much in this game, but I know the other conflict series games, you better bring your men and you better bring them tactically, because they aren't nothing but meat for the meat grinder. Especially in some of the Pacific War games that I've played. Each of these games is unique in its own right. They're a tremendous amount of fun. Moving up there, it looks like we're still lagging behind on this one force. Your tanks are always going to get split up. This is one of the finest examples that I could have given you trying to keep my armor together. I did a pretty darn good job up to this point, and it just seems like every time they're always going to get sidetracked. It's almost impossible for it not to happen. They just get pulled in every direction, and you really got to manage your resources in such a way. You have to be dynamic in not only your movement but your thoughts. You have to have new thoughts of everything, whether it's chaining trucks, refilling truck with another truck because the movement just makes more sense. Even though your tank won't get fuel that turn, it means your fuel trucks are getting fueled faster. Then those are the kind of decisions that you need to make. You can see they got a pretty hefty bunker down there in front of Tobruk. It's now, both of those bunkers when I started had a health points of 7. So, if you're doing that all with armor on those bunkers, each time you attack, it's going to take 1 fuel unit. And you really need to get the crushing victories to where it takes the 2 hit points off. And to do that, that's where the flanking is going to come in. And I think maybe that's why he designed it this particular way. So the flanking bonuses help your fuel more than the actual combat factors in this particular game. At least that's the way I see it. That's the way it feels to me when I play it. That's one of the most important ways you can save fuel is by getting those crushing victories with your armor. And to do that with a lot of your opponents, you need to get the flanking bonuses. But here's the thing, is that in order to get those flanking bonuses, you got to use fuel to move your tanks. And if you're moving them out into the desert to get your flanking bonuses, then it takes longer for your fuel supply trucks to get to them, and it just increases your supply lines even further. And you have the potential of getting surrounded with your armor if they run out of fuel for a turn or whatever the case may be. So that's why it's important to at least send a couple infantry divisions up north with your tanks, I believe. And you can see I've outrun them at a steady pace up to this point in the game, but I see a bottleneck coming right here. These bunkers are the main reason why. These bunkers are burning up a lot of fuel to destroy. We are getting some crushing victories on them, but still, even at 7 hit points each, that's 14 hit points total. That's, even with all crushing victories, it's using a minimum of 7 fuel, and that's not including the fuel that it took to drive to those bunkers. So we're finally broke through. That German armor is going to start pounding away at the city, and the Battle of Tobruk has begun. So, or at least it's getting ready to come to a close, hopefully, I should say. And that Italian armor down there to the south of Tobruk by about 7 or 8 hexes, we'll see it eventually. They run out of gas at some point. I just forget about them for about 4 or 5 turns, because I just couldn't afford to send a truck down that way at that point. So you can see we have a healthy stream of infantry coming in, and I got a lot of those zones wrapped up. You can see on the right there on the mini map as well. You can see I now managed to get my front line pretty much vertical, all the way up and down from the beach down to the southern edge of the map. It's almost vertical, and that's the way I want it. I want that vertical wall just forward, like a wall of spikes moving eastward, crushing everything in its path. I am worried about the quality of this Italian infantry at this point, because I just don't know their quality level. I don't know well, so far they've held their own, but I don't know what the quality level of what's coming. Once again, the whole time I'm playing, I don't know what's coming after this point. I've played up to this point about, I think, 3 times, and so I knew my strategy up until this point. And like I said before, this is one of the best strategies that I had managed to put together so far. So I'm thankful that I got this one on video. But after this point, it's all up in the air, and my plan basically is to keep that armor focused and together, catch up that infantry and that artillery. I want to use that artillery to pound down the movement points of that, specifically that kind of Indian infantry that just appeared there to the south of my tanks. So I really need to start pounding away those movement points of anybody on the edge. That way they can't encircle my armor. They can't get to my fuel trucks. My fuel trucks can just be happy and shuttle fuel back. I never want them to see an enemy ever. And those bunkers, it was another 7-point bunker in Tobruk. So, between the 3 bunker complexes, we're looking at 21 fuel. That's with all single victories. Crushing victories would have that, but there's going to be a mix in there unless you can get a majority of flanking attacks. Those armor, thankfully, are powerful, especially the German armor. They can really put down some crushing attacks. At this point, your fuel is getting so stretched that I was getting a little worried up and around Tobruk. I knew Tobruk had a fuel supply, and I had refilled my depots from those points, and you can see here this turn there's complete lack of Italian collaboration. So there is some random events. I'll go back to the fuel in a minute, but there are some random events in this particular campaign, and the Italian collaboration is one of them. They can get a little pissed off every once in a while, and they just won't move. So you know what? They don't get no fuel. That's why they always are second priority on fuel. It doesn't happen too often. I think it's happened once or twice in this specific game up to this point. But you can never know with them. The other random event is the British can raid your HQ. That'll happen. It's happened to me a couple times, I think several times, if not every time, on turn 20 or somewhere in that range. And that cancels out your turns of every unit. So I've had some bad things happen. A lot of times it has no effect except it wastes a turn of movement. But there's been some bad things that have happened as a result of that in a couple test plays that I've had. So, that brings me to another issue, is the randomness. Now, everything's random in this game so far that I've found, except for, the unit composition is pretty much the same. You can see they just retook Benghazi with a mystery unit there. I don't know what retook it. They also retook another city somewhere. I'll eventually take them excuse me, both back fairly quickly. Um, but the randomness seems to be high in this game. Not necessarily unit composition because they're pretty much the same, but the deployment of those units, the enemy, are going to be different. You may run into armor first, or tanks first, or both, or infantry. Um, the airfields will be in different locations. The tactical move point lines, those change every turn. So there's a lot of randomness. There's a lot of replayability to this game. It's not going to be the same when you play it. So the fuel, like I said, is getting a little stretched out here. I'm getting a little worried. And Tobruk's going to fall. You can see they reinforced it with some British line infantry. Now it looks probably, the 8th Army would be my guess. It looks like them, the men in shorts. So the British have come. And we still got some lingering Indians down there in the south. Those Italians are out of fuel. You can see right there, they're out of fuel. They're stranded. Those Indians are infamous for just surrounding my fueled out tanks, the empty tanks. They just move behind them, cut off their supplies, and then run away. And then the tank is just absolutely screwed from that point. The AI is pretty sneaky in this game. They're not tough, but they are sneaky. My reserves are going to go back up and attempt to recapture Benghazi. I don't think they have any sort of difficult resistance there. And then they're going to get that other city up north of there as well. The initial infantry that captured those cities, they're just going to keep on marching east. They did their job. I need them up front. They're one of the units that should already be with my tanks. Down there in the southern desert, they're just sweeping away. Same as always. Let's speed it back up because Tobruk is going to fall here shortly, okay? And we're off again. Looks like Benghazi didn't put up any resistance, as I remembered correctly. That artillery is going to keep on moving. I needed to catch up. Like I said, the artillery in this game, I found, for me at least, I protected the flanks a lot with the artillery. The Stuka got a lot of that work too. They weren't, they didn't do anything great or strategically necessary. Well, I guess you could consider the flanks a necessity. Actually, they would be, but they didn't shine, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's another one of those special units, so you can see, and it was German infantry that I had up there. So those units, I haven't identified them yet. I just didn't take the time to read. I was more in a hurry to just get through this. So I apologize to you. I don't know what units those were, but singly, individually, my Italian infantry cannot handle those. The Germans seem to be able to do so just fine. There we go. We're moving past Tobruk now, and we're finally seeing a road. We're at the end of the desert, and that's just a whole lot of nothing down there. It just seems like it takes forever to sweep that, and it does. Like I said, you want to do it. Don't make the mistake of just running using that road, all your infantry sweeping past there. I think that's what Rommel did in real life. He ran into a lot of trouble for it. But take your time, get it out of the way, because it has to be done. And you don't want to have to sweep the western desert when your whole army group is in the east. And you definitely don't want to lose El Agilia. Never had that happen, and I don't plan on having that happen. So that's why I have such a focus on clearing those regions out down there. Like I said, I have no idea about Allied reinforcements. So that's the whole key. Is there going to be a counterattack? Who knows? You can see I've cut off those Indians down there. They were just running away, giving me grief, taking up my time, so I eventually just cut off their supply. I think I actually forgot about them for quite a bit, but they were at 0 health. They couldn't move. They couldn't regain their supply line. You can see there's a white flag in that region. I just haven't gone in there with any soldiers yet. They are, yeah, I moved my infantry away, so they've pretty much surrendered at that point. I'm assuming that's what that white flag means. So that was my point that I missed earlier before I got sidetracked, was Tobruk fuel source. Now, in the other games that I've played of this scenario, I have refueled at Tobruk before with depots, but it would only give me like 7, 8, 9 fuel, something like that. And then one time I think it gave me 15 fuel. So I don't know how it refuels. So that will be a new experience for me. I don't know if that will completely be a game changer or what. So that's why I'm probably, from my understanding of the information on it, is it's a limited supply, which is why I've ran that depot right there all the way back to El Algilia to get 70 fuel and to hopefully get back in time to Tobruk before Tobruk fuel source or that depot run out of fuel, because I don't know. And even after this game, I still don't know how it operates. Actually, I do. I have a bit more of an idea of how it works, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So the infantry, like I said, they're finally hitting the roads. You can see they're just full of red box fatigue, on and off, on and off. It was like I'd get to move them one turn, and then the next turn I'd have to recover. I didn't want to march them at 100%, march them down all the way up to 100% to where they have to take a turn to rest, because I never knew when I was going to run into any opposition. You run into opposition when you're fully fatigued. In the other games, that was a bad thing, and I'm assuming in the desert it'd probably be even worse. So who knows? But finally, I'm coming up onto this just cluster of objectives here, and I can just sweep away in these roads. The infantry's already down south there on that last final objective there, so everything else is pretty much along this northern road. You can see the couple towns right there. They are east of El Abid, and they are, not connected by road or any other, modern transportation or infrastructure, I should say. So we start marching some infantry south, which wasn't the point. I'm already getting sidetracked. You know the deal. Well, any war gamer knows the deal. Every plan is down the crapper first turn, maybe second turn if you're lucky. And these conflict games are even worse. So looks like we got some more British armor coming in there. We got one of their infantry units surrounded. That division is going to be gone. I'm assuming that's remnants of their 8th Army. It has to be. And Stuka, I've jumped forward now, is finally going to start taking a supporting role now that I've secured that immediate area around that airfield. I have had situations one time in a previous playtest of this scenario actually it was back in the beginning of the scenario, south of Benghazi where I was just at, and I just landed on an airfield and it was right next to enemy territory, and the next turn the enemy had a hidden unit in one of those hexes and assaulted my Stuka that was at that airfield. And the Stuka moved out of the airfield hex and went to 0 fuel. So I couldn't fly it anywhere, and I'm assuming I had to, secure the area first with a combat unit and then get a fuel truck to it, refill it, and then maybe it could take off from where it was at or go back to the previous airfield that it was pushed off of if you had recaptured it. I don't know. I'm assuming it was one of those things or a combination of, one or more. I don't know. So the fuel looks like it has about 50 just refueled. That'll knock it down even further, and those trucks are just still moving, man. Busiest units on the map. They don't have any fuel, and they got a lot of decent movement points. So I would be willing to bet that those fuel trucks moved more hexes overall than any other unit on this board at this point, and up to the point of the end of the game. You can see now the coastal road path there on the mini map is kind of stretching out above. I no longer have that vertical front. See, they're trying to cut me off right there. Thankfully, I got in some more of those commando units, those unidentified commando units. That's what I'll call them, because they act like commandos. They are straight guerrilla warriors, and they provide me with a vicious and fierce and sneaky opponent. I do respect those those units. So you can see I got some serious German infantry up in there now. They only have 2 hit points, but they're gonna go ahead and march on down and try and catch up to the main force. That artillery is now solid on the front line and just banging away. That artillery does do, as opposed to what I was telling you earlier, I forgot. This artillery does get down and dirty, and between the fatigue and the movement points and the hit point drains that it was causing on that front line, that artillery up there on the northern coastal road did do some good. You can see I'm starting to hit some resistance. I'm starting to lose some battles against this British infantry and British armor, and it's getting thick on the front. Fuel depots are still moving along there. Still have no idea what's going on with Tobruk's fuel source at this point. And a couple times during this game, I did move my depots back onto that city hex, and it didn't give me any fuel that turn or the other turn, and it said Tobruk's fuel supply was empty, and that's why I, sent another depot over to El Agilia. I just didn't know how large of a battle to expect coming up in the east. And British armor and one of those units. Infantry seemed to be taking a beating down there. I don't know if you can see it at such a speed, but one of them's down to 4 hit points. The other has 3, and I think another has 4 as well. So they're starting to take some hits down there. Those infantry, the Italian infantry, they just don't pack up enough punch to deal with the enemy en masse when they really start to put up a fight. And then on top of the fact they don't obey your orders all the time, or even give their own orders. And move that Italian armor back up on the road. You can see the tanks, they constantly get drawn off the roads, and you just gotta get them back. There's a couple times when the trucks have had to go out and deliver fuel off road, but mainly it's that's our MO. The tanks are responsible for getting on the road. The trucks have a big enough responsibility running back and forth through all the crap that's going on, and the tanks need to be where they need to be at. Of course, there are exceptions, but for the most part, the men did what they were supposed to do. They know where they needed to be at. It's proud commander. Those infantry are just getting worn out, fatigued, but I had to secure that airfield. I just had to move up that Stuka to a secure location because, once again, lack of intelligence and everything else in this scenario. Wasn't sure what to expect. I had some things that kind of scarred me in this game on my first couple playthroughs, and I was just bound and determined not to let happen again. So, but once again, at the same time, I told you earlier, I feel that this game is easier than others of those of the Conflict series. But yeah, it just seems that way, and I don't think it's my skill level that has increased that greatly either. But he does a good job balancing it, JN. He does a good job balancing it, the difficulties of this game between combat and supply and awareness. That's where the difficulty comes. Being aware and having the fuel there. So if you can't do those things, I could see you easily failing at this game. As a matter of fact, I have failed miserably the first couple attempts. Actually, I think the first couple attempts I made my way all the way to Tobruk before I restarted to, test out the supply lines more. And once you get so stretched out, that's you can't experiment anymore. And that's mainly what I was trying to do, was see how the fuel worked. And march on. So I plan on playing this again through hard and very hard, and then ultra hard. We'll see how far we can work our way up the leaderboards. See them Germans getting in there now. They're getting their gloves dirty. And LL, it's going on right now. There's a battle there, I heard, and it looks like everybody's invited. That's one of the biggest bottlenecks I've seen so far. Tobruk had some bunkers in it, but they got some manpower at Alaman, as as well they should. It looks like I'm putting together a solid string of victories here. And I got some reserves coming on in. Everything looks like it's getting refueled. I got 3 refuel symbols up on there. Stuka's now towards the rear a little bit, but still able to support the northern infantry of the southern combat area. And I got a reinforcement Italian tank there. It's going to catch up. At some point, your reinforcements, if their armor, are pretty much useless because they can move 10 hexes and then they're out of fuel. And are you going to go back and send a truck to fuel? No, you're not going to do that. You're going to keep on fueling your combat vets. I mean, case could be made. You can see here in a little bit, they haven't come on yet, but I get some Tiger tanks on there, and the Germans, when they were in Africa, some of the earliest Tigers did go to Africa, and that's where they broke down and ran into supply problems, and I think they worked out a lot of their quirks in the deserts of Africa. So you can see that this was the earliest arrival of the Tiger tanks here that I have here shortly. You'll see them. It's going too fast, but I'm just telling you this because when they appear, I don't want to have to explain this. It's a little difficult to manage, but it just seemed the Tiger tanks appearing and then me having absolutely no use for them, that just seemed very appropriate to me historically. I wasn't expecting them to get towards the front lines, and I definitely wasn't depending on it. So you can see right down there in that combat area, you can see I start to get some yellow units. So I've been taking a lot of hits, and I moved one back to a rear city to rest, and you can actually recover your units with rest and get them with reserves. You do have to be behind the front lines quite a bit. I don't know how many hexes. I haven't been able to pin it down to a certain value, but get them back to a city, refill their hexes. And like I said, each game is different, so some of them work different ways. And for example, Iwo Jima, that you request resources off of your ships off the coast, and one of the resources you can request is hit points for your infantry, and then that goes into your resources, and then you can use them. You can see down below my resources are at 61. So I don't know how, if you play the conflict series at all, or which ones you do, but how many times have you ever had 63 resources built up playing on normal difficulty or above? I've never played on anything easier than normal difficulty, but I would imagine it would feel something like this game is feeling to me at this point. I'm still expecting a large British counterattack, something big to push back. But still, it's very enjoyable. Like I said, there was several times I played this game up to Tobruk about 3 times. You can see I'm hitting Alexandria now, but I have played this game up to Tobruk about 3 times. I've played it probably 6 or 7 times just in between, El Agilia and Benghazi. And several of those times I lost the game strategically due to blunders and being outsmarted. And a lot of that had to do with me just not knowing how the game operated. So you slip up and you'll get got, I can tell you that. But for the most part, if you're an experienced wargamer, especially with the conflict series, you should be able to walk right through this. I don't know. Maybe I was speak out of place here. But like I said, I do intend to raise the difficulty, and I'll tell you what, it could be a whole new ball game. So I might not get past Benghazi, let alone Cairo. So that fuel depot that moved in over to Tobruk there, got there and got quite a bit of amount of fuel. So at that point, I realized that Tobruk, over time, I believe, receives fuel replacements, just like you receive reinforcements of infantry or armor, etc. You just don't see them, or maybe you do. For me, it's only certain of the games that I really pay attention to the turn start screens. This one, at least on this difficulty, felt like I was breezing through. I was still very wary of an allied counterattack, but at this point, I could see the end of the road. You can see everything else is just kind of falling into place there. My infantry is now approaching their final objective, and my armor is now bypassing Alexandria, leaving that to the reserves, and going straight after the gold there down in Cairo. So we will slow it down here for the last bit of it, but we'll take a look at what happens. I do feel that something bad is about to happen, though. That's how I felt during this point of the game, at least. Yeah, that artillery down there has marched along with, I think, that same infantry unit for ever. They've been buddies, battle buddies. And I did receive a third artillery that's just now getting towards the front lines. I am interested in seeing the higher difficulties and on the higher turns to see what kind of reinforcements are coming up. I would be interested in having to use those Tiger tanks and any other heavier reinforcements that ended up coming in. The amount of resources that I have built up at this point is just crazy. So those Italians have been out of fuel down there for a while, or up there. And the infantry is just so, I don't even know how that happened. They got so scattered over the desert there. Couldn't tell you. I think the number one on the leaderboard as the time of recording this video was finished on turn 54, which is this turn. I can't remember his name. And that truck refueled that tank. I wanted to get that Italian armor up there in the corner airfield, capture that, and not only that, but I wasn't sure. I was completely, unaware of whether or not there was any enemy elements up there. So yeah, scouting it was a necessity. You could see that Tiger tank that was just there. I did move it up. I was using some emergency fuel on it. At this point, I felt like I was at the goal. So still shuttling fuel. Stuka's now going down there to support. Starting to hit some infantry outside of Cairo, and right now it seems pretty much empty at this point. Looks like I'm getting 8 tactical move points every turn, so that is helping out that infantry a little bit down there when they can manage to get a tactical move line. Like I said, those lines change every turn, so just because there's one there next turn doesn't mean you're going to get to use it. Stuka is just out of range of hitting Cairo, so they're going to be out of the question. Alright, we got ourselves a foothold. Let's slow it down. Okay, now it's probably looking like a half screen, but that's a little annoying when I'm recording, but oh well. Until I figure out a different way, that's what we got to deal with when we're on the map edge. Yeah, there's the Tiger tank right there. And you can see it's kind of hit a fuel depot when the depot was on its way back to Tobruk. But it ain't going to get there. Spoiler alert, in case you didn't notice. Indians, British. We got some stuff going on right there. Now Cairo's putting up a bit of a fight. Big old bunker there. Some Indians. And a dead division of infantry, British infantry. I see doom for the Allies. They will not stop this machine today. So Cairo actually ends up putting up a bit of resistance here. I just wanted to show you. We're going to speed it up here because Cairo did take me a minute to work through. But I had the toughest time with Cairo. And that was only because I did a direct on frontal assault with a low hit point infantry and only one flanking support. And he had those Indians to neutralize that support. So in the end, I should have done in the first place what any, patient tactical commander would have done, which is to hit that infantry on the south that's already destroyed, then push off the Indians, and then finish off that bunker. So because I didn't take it in that steps, it made me pay for it a little bit. But for the most part, wrapped it up. It was no threat, just an inconvenience to the German war machine. And was a little disappointed. I had a lot of, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of fun with this one, just because the design of it, it really reflects this type of theater very well. But no British counterattack. I wanted some big armor battles. I felt like it was a pushover, which was the case in the early campaign, as you know, but that changed a little bit later on. But I don't know. We'll see about the difficulty. My disappointment may be completely relieved at that point. So the Tiger's going to move forward a little bit more, and then that division's going to run out of gas, and that's where they'll stay. So let's speed it up a little bit, and then I'll slow it down once we get to the finish, I guess. Fast forward and let's finish this thing up here. You can see I just lost a battle, got a crushing defeat, and starting to take some hits. So I wasn't too worried about it, but I was a little impressed with the resistance at Cairo. Not too much, but the Tigers were within easy distance of where I was at. If I really needed to fuel them and get them up there, I could have gotten that done and had them on the front line pretty fast. I didn't feel I needed to do that. I was still kind of hoping for an Allied counterattack at this point. None to be found. A little bit of scrounge infantry down there in the southern desert, but that's inevitable when you have that sort of theater and that mass of terrain wide open, with lack of supplies on top of it. You're going to have infantry running around with other infantry chasing them. Nowhere to be found, either of them. No fuel to move quick or whatever else. So you can see, though, I got them in a pretty solid line there, and even that same unit of artillery still with that division of infantry. I don't remember what division that is. It's Italian infantry, if I remember correctly. I got my German line, African line infantry coming up, and in the reserves there, just off to the left. But at this point, it's over. So we will go ahead and slow it down here in just a second, but we got a lot of cleanup work here to do really quickly. You can see the resources and are still hanging out about 65. That's because I started to use some emergency fuel, a lot of emergency fuel and fuel shares, and I think I popped a couple mortars and anti-tank weapons in Alexandria and Cairo. So unnecessary, but it was all in the name of fuel preservation, pretty much. So we'll go ahead and slow it down here in just a second. Take a look at the mini-map. And here's what we got. Here's what we went through. Here's everything that's left. And we'll go ahead and finish this up. I think I got to take like 1 or 2 more shots in here, and it'll be done. I could just end the turn, but just looking for any last guys out there right offhand. The only question is where did I finish on the leaderboards? If any spot did I grab? Come on, Epic Fox, you're done. Let's do it. Sorry, I'm a perfectionist. Not really. Just on strategy. Yeah, the Tigers can't move. Let's finish it. Show you the resources. That's everything that I had. I didn't want to take too much time on it. I was a little cautious, I will say. I was a little cautious, still was getting my ducks in row here because I wasn't sure about an allied counterattack on the last turn. So you can see there, 100 VPs at turn 60. I've been entered in the local Hall of Fame. I don't know what place. Why don't you tell me what place? Am I the supreme, or am I nothing? There's ultra hard right up there. Then we go down to very hard. There's hard somewhere in there if we didn't pass our normal. There we are. Epic Fox, 6th place in 60 turns. Darn it! 2 more turns. It's 56. 56 is the top rank. 58 is second. Oh well. Like I said, this particular campaign wasn't the most challenging of scenarios that I've played by Conflict series. However, very, very entertaining. I did have a lot of fun with this. I would put money on the fact that with the increase of difficulty, this game will be exactly that, much more difficult and much greater challenge. So I did happen to notice up top on the ultra hard difficulty, I think the first place was, I can't remember, in between 100 and 120 turns. So that kind of gives you the scope of just how much more reinforcements and fuel shuttling you'd be dealing with. I bet you those bottlenecks would look a lot different. So maybe the next time I do that, if it's any good, I'll post it up here. Let me know what you think, and I do have another one coming. I haven't decided which one yet, but I love these games. I'm also going to do some other stuff, so I hope to see you then. Epic Fox is out.